So I published this book, Parent Yourself Again, way back in 2018, and I noticed one of the recurring negative reviews for this book is about forgiving your parents. In this video, I would like to explore the meaning of forgiveness a little deeper, and if you're struggling with childhood wounds, I'm going to leave it up to you after you finish watching this video to decide whether you want to forgive your parents or not. But before I begin, I would like to stress that forgiveness is a choice. Just because I have a section in my book on forgiveness doesn't mean that you have to forgive your parents. Just because other people benefit from forgiving their parents doesn't mean that you have to forgive too. If you're not ready to forgive your parents now, or you don't want to, then don't. What I do want to present to you right at the beginning is that you have a choice. It's up to you, and I want you to be clear about this. First of all, forgiveness is one of those words that can be confusing because it means different things to different people. For example, if I say flower, what do you have in mind? Someone will see a rose, someone will see a sunflower, someone will see a tulip, hibiscus, etc. Flower is the word that we all understand, but we have such different interpretation and images of what a flower is. When I read my review, I noticed that the people who are against forgiving their parents usually have abusive and narcissistic parents. They often see forgiveness as an act of condoning their parents' abusive behavior, or they think that forgiveness is staying with their abusive parents and continue to let them abuse you. But that's not what forgiveness means, at least not in my book. The whole premise of this book is to connect with your inner child and have a conversation to have a better understanding of what your inner child wants from you. If your inner child feels unsafe, then provide safety for your inner child. Leave your parents. As mentioned in the book, the role of the inner parent is to provide protection, which is the masculine energy, or nurturance, which is the feminine energy. If any of these are missing, our inner child will feel unloved. There are two forms of forgiveness: internal forgiveness and external forgiveness. External forgiveness is when you tell the other person that I forgive you. It's usually a way to help the other person to relieve their sense of guilt. Internal forgiveness is to set yourself free from anger and resentment. You don't have to tell the other person that you have forgiven them, because you're not forgiving for the other person, you're forgiving for your own well-being, for yourself. When I see forgiveness, I see it as an internal forgiveness. It's about having closure. When you condemn someone like your parents, it's like you have a computer with apps running in the background. They might not be obvious to you, but they're active in the background. Sure, you can still use the computer with the apps running in the background, but your system will be very slow and heavy. Personally, I prefer to close those programs and have some form of closure so that my system can run smoother and I can be lighter and feel more free. And that's what forgiveness is about. If the word forgiveness isn't something you like, you can always replace it with other words like letting go, moving on, or releasing the pain from my system. It means the same thing. It means to not continue to hold on to this matter and let it define you and your life. And you can only forgive someone when you have some form of negativity towards them. If today there isn't any emotional charge against your parents, then there wouldn't be a need to forgive them, and you won't be watching this video. What we don't realize is that even if you cut off from your parents, move far away from them, and have no contact with them, you still carry the pain and wound with you everywhere you go. They are still in your system. And when you still have a grudge towards someone, any small incident can trigger you. That's why such a small little word like forgive can trigger an array of emotion in you. When people suggest forgiving your parents, you become like, what do you mean by forgiving my parents? How can I forgive them for doing this to me? Blah blah blah. You are not as free as you think you are. If you are more neutral, you'll be like, I'm not open to forgiving my parents yet. Not right now. There's no emotional charge. It doesn't matter to you if you forgive them or not. You just continue your life as it is. And we carry this energy of anger and resentment in our system. You might wonder how come your spouse is abusive too. How come your boss is abusive too? And even the person at the cashier is unkind to you. There are so many people in this world, but you keep meeting people that are not nice, that are abusive and critical, that's because you attract other people like your parents. You condemn one person, the universe brings you more people to condemn. That's how the law of attraction works. I actually didn't want to publish this book. I know if I write about my parents, readers are going to superimpose their parents onto my book, onto my story, and not all of them will like what I write. Why? Because there is a huge spectrum of parents. Words that are soothing to me might be jarring and triggering to another person. Every parent is different, and you have to use your own words that are soothing and healing to you. But if I were to categorize childhood wounds into two very broad categories, they would be like, the first group is people who feel unloved and emotionally neglected as a child. These are people who have parents who are absent, emotionally immature. They do not understand you fully, and they don't mirror back your emotion. They don't give you the kind of love that you desire. The second group of people are those who are abused as a child or have narcissistic parents. Your parents might shame you, they might be jealous of your success, or they might have hurt you physically, emotionally, and so on. There can be overlapping between these two, but the main difference is, for the first group, your parents didn't give you what you want as a child. They didn't give you what you expect or want from them. But at the same time, they didn't do anything much to you. And your suffering is not a result of someone doing something to you. It's a result of lacking in action like protection and nurturance. While for the second group, your parents did something that traumatized you. Both groups are hurt by their parents, but for very different reasons. From what I observed, it's much easier for the first group to forgive their parents than the second group, because there is a difference in terms of vibration and energy of someone who is emotionally neglected and someone who is abused. People who are emotionally neglected often feel a sense of loneliness, unloved, and disappointment. Their common theme is that they constantly yearn for love and attention from another person, like their parents. People who have been abused might also feel a sense of loneliness and unloved, but their vibration is often that of fear and powerlessness. There is a desire to feel safe and in control. That's their priority. So the starting point of these two groups are different. Fear is a much heavier vibration than disappointment and loneliness. It's easier to forgive someone who is imperfect and didn't meet your expectations. It's easier for the first group to see their parents might be unaware or unintentional in hurting them. But for someone who is abused, it's much harder to see their parents' action as unintentional or good for them. Anger is an appropriate emotion to feel when you're abused. It helps you to get out of fear, helplessness, and insecurity. It's an improvement in terms of vibration. You feel like you have a little bit more control of your life, and it feels better than fear. If you're feeling angry with your parents, I'm not going to tell you not to feel it. But at the same time, feeling safe, anger, and injustice isn't the same as feeling happy, joy, love, and bliss. There's better feeling emotion beyond anger and resentment. The more time you feel being angry with your parents, the less time you have feeling the other emotions like joy, peace, and love. You can't have these two vibrations at the same time. They are not of the same frequency. And all these positive emotions are natural state of being when we let go of things that we have resistance to or doesn't serve us. That's what you deserve to be and have, regardless of what happened in your childhood. But when we hold on to this past event, it keeps bringing us back to the vibration of anger and resentment. You can be happy for one moment, then something reminds you of your parents or childhood, and then it brings your moods down. It's better to feel anger all at once and just release it out of your system in a safe environment where no one gets hurt. To release anger from your body, try this technique I learned from Energy Medicine by Donna Eden. It's called blowing up your anger. You bring your arms onto your side with fists, tight fists. Then you bring them behind you and up in here. And then you exhale big and strong release to the ground. Whoosh! And at the bottom, you're opening up your hands. You can do it with a sound whoosh. And you do it 2 to 3 times. And for the last time, you do a slow release. This helps to release anger in a non-violent way. But sometimes releasing anger from your body is not enough. Empathy is often an important ingredient in forgiving someone because it offers a new and different perspective on the situation. If you keep thinking about your parents the same old way, it just keeps renewing your anger every time you think of your parents. For me, I felt emotionally neglected as a child, but I wasn't abused. Even though my dad can be a little bit nitpicky and critical at times and not very supportive of what I do, he wasn't like verbally abusive. I was also very sensitive as a child. And because my book is written from my perspective, that's why people in the first group, the people who feel emotionally neglected, resonate with my book more. So when I write something like your parents did the best they could, the first group can understand, but the second group, the group that have abusive parents, will think that my book is like crap. This book is about reparenting yourself, your inner child. Every inner child is different. It's challenging to write a universal book that addresses all childhood trauma, and that's why this book encourages you to have a conversation with your inner child. You want to understand what your inner child needs. You want to find the most soothing words for your inner child and learn what types of words will soothe your inner child and what doesn't. It's part of the reparenting process and understanding yourself better. But if I were in the second group and I have abusive parents, this is what I would say to myself. I don't know the full story of what happened to my parents. Something must have happened along the way that caused them to steer in this direction. No one is born to be abusive. When my parents were babies, they were joyful, peaceful beings, and they didn't have the intention to hurt anyone. And my heart knows this. But as they become adults, they must have become more and more disconnected with their spirit. They are not in alignment. They lost their way. They didn't know how to deal with the pain. I can see that they are miserable inside, even though they might not show any remorse for what they did. That's because if they were to self-reflect and feel the shame and guilt, or if they were to feel their pain they are avoiding, it would break them down completely. And they don't know if they can handle it for themselves. Again, I want to stress that empathizing with another person doesn't mean that you condone their behavior. Not knowing how to handle their pain doesn't mean that it's okay to inflict pain on others. Empathizing with another person also doesn't mean that you go and help the other person or hope they become a better or different person. It's not your job to fix them. Your only job is to reparent yourself, while they have to be responsible for themselves. Empathy just helps you to soothe your pain. Rather than seeing them as evil monsters who are out there to get you, you see them as hurt people who have no idea how to deal with their own pain. It lets you know that your parents are not being the true expression of their spirit, because if they were, they would be alive, free, fulfilled, fun, and truly happy. They will not numb themselves so that they don't feel anything, or drown themselves in alcohol, or pretend to be happy, or feel a need to hurt other people. If you have been abused by your parents, that's a fact. Whether you condemn or you forgive them, you are still abused. You cannot change what has happened. You can only change how you feel what has happened. We think that somehow by hating a person, you punish the other person, but the truth is we are just punishing ourselves. So now you have a choice to make. Forgive your parents or not forgive your parents. If you choose not to forgive your parents, that's okay. But instead of being like, I'll never forgive my parents for what they did to me, don't use the word no or never. Just use words like not right now, not yet. This will help you to feel lighter. When I wrote this book, Parent Yourself Again, there was no hard and fast rule. It's not like you have to do this or not do that. It's just a book to help you start a conversation with your inner child and understand what your role is as the inner parent. If there is a section in this book that you don't resonate with, just drop it. You don't have to use it. To find out more about this book, click the link in the video description below.